There is a question many men ask in the dark, at 2 or 3 in the morning, when the whole world is asleep and there is nothing left above them but an empty ceiling. The question is, how can she walk away as if it meant nothing? You gave everything. You were patient when she turned cold. You stayed when she went silent for days. You blamed yourself every time she pulled away, and you tried even harder. Then one day, she left. Or worse, she stayed physically while she had already left emotionally a long time ago. And the part that hurts most is not the breakup. It is that she looks fine. She posts pictures. She laughs. She keeps living as if those years never happened, while you cannot sleep. Today, I am going to answer that question for you. Not with comforting lines about karma, not with promises that she will come crawling back on her knees, but with what attachment psychology has documented over more than 40 years of research. The truth is more complicated than you think, and in a strange way, it is also fairer than you imagine, just fair on a very slow timeline. When I say betrayal, you may immediately think she was with someone else, but most of the men listening to this video were not betrayed in that way. They were betrayed in a way no one else could see. It was the day you needed her most, the day you lost your job, the day your father was hospitalized, the day you finally found the courage to say something you had kept hidden, and she chose silence. No argument, no anger, she simply was not there. Her body may have been present, but the person had disappeared somewhere inside herself. It was when she gave you just enough warmth to make you believe things were getting better, then disappeared just long enough for you to begin doubting your own memory. It was when you asked, "Are you okay?" and received a single word, "Fine," that both of you knew was not true, but she closed the door and you were not allowed to knock. It was when you loved without conditions for 2 years, 3 years, and never once received an equal emotional commitment in return. Not commitment in words. Commitment in the form of staying when things became difficult. And it was when she received all of that as if it were simply the default, as if you were a service that would always be available. The hardest part is that she may never have called any of this betrayal. In her mind, she was simply needing space. She was simply not good at expressing emotion. But your body knew. Your nervous system recorded every single time. That is why you still react when your phone vibrates. That is why your chest still tightens when you remember those silent evenings. Her lack of awareness does not reduce your injury, and it does not exempt her from the price of what happened. It only means that the price may arrive later. To understand what happens after that, you need to understand something she could not see while you were still there. In 1980, John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, described a mechanism he called defensive exclusion. The idea is simple, but enormously important. Some people do not merely bury emotion after they feel it. They block emotional information at the point of entry, before it can fully become conscious emotion. Later researchers described this through what are called deactivating strategies. These include minimizing the importance of attachment, denying the need to be close to another person, and blocking memories and thoughts that trigger vulnerability. And here is the detail very few people know. This mechanism does not only mute pain, it also dulls joy. It lowers the volume on positive emotions too. Affection, gratitude, belonging, the feeling of being deeply connected to someone. Do you understand what that means? It means that throughout the time you were with her, she may have been looking at you through fogged glass. Not because she was incapable of recognizing your value, but because her brain was actively turning down the emotional signals that would have told her how devastating losing you might actually be. That is one of the deepest tragedies of avoidant psychology. The wall built to block anticipated pain also blocks gratitude, presence, and appreciation. So every time she withdrew, every time she made a promise and broke it, every time she chose silence instead of staying present, she may have done it without fully understanding what she was risking. She believed she was stepping away from something that would always be there. Something she could neglect, return to later, and find exactly as she left it. She did not understand that what she was risking could not be replaced, and her own defense system was the very thing hiding that truth from her. That is not an excuse. It is an explanation, and those are two very different things. Now we come to the part that hurts you most. How calm she looked after everything ended. You see her going out with friends. You see the pictures. You hear that she is doing great. And you reach the only conclusion that seems logical. The relationship never meant anything to her. I need you to listen carefully. In 1997, researchers R. Chris Fraley and Philip Shaver conducted a classic experiment. They asked participants to try not to think about being abandoned by a romantic partner while measuring their physiological responses. The result? People with dismissive avoidant attachment suppressed those thoughts much more effectively than the other groups. And while suppressing them, their physiological activation actually decreased. In other words, the mechanism works. It genuinely works in the short term. So the calmness you see is not proof that she is unaffected. It may be evidence that her defense system is operating at full capacity. Here is what I want you to burn into your mind. You are comparing your inner world with her outer surface. That is not a fair comparison, and it is slowly destroying you. You are hurting openly. You cry. You message your closest friend in the middle of the night. You reread old conversations. You are processing. She is doing the opposite. She is using psychological energy to keep the truth beneath the surface. Not because she feels nothing, but because allowing herself to feel everything could threaten the identity she built around the belief that she does not need anyone. And here is the detail. Very few people tell you. What she is doing is not free. It takes work. A lot of work. The bill simply has not arrived yet. This is the most important part of the video. In 2004, Mario Michelincer and his colleagues designed a very clever experiment. They asked participants to suppress thoughts related to separation. But this time they added a secondary task, remembering a 7-digit number. That was all. Just a small cognitive load. And the defense collapsed. Avoidant participants, who were very good at suppression under normal conditions, suddenly showed the very material they had been burying. Researchers gave the phenomenon a chillingly accurate description: the fragility of avoidant defenses. Do you understand what this means in real life? It means her system may work well, until life adds a little pressure. A stressful project, an illness, a sleepless night, a new relationship beginning to lose its shine, a birthday when no one calls, and then the wall begins to crack. And here is the finding that genuinely made me stop when I read it. David Sparra's research group at the University of Arizona followed people going through marital separation over time. At 4.5 years after separation, they found that attachment avoidance, not attachment anxiety, predicted the distress that was still lingering. Read that again. The anxious person, the one who suffered visibly, sent the messages, cried, and could not hide anything, 4.5 years later, was doing better. The avoidant person, the one who seemed to walk away effortlessly, the one who looked like they had moved on a long time ago, 4.5 years later could still be carrying it. This is not karma. This is data. Pain does not disappear because it is suppressed. It is delayed, and the interest on that debt can be measured in years. So what exactly cracks that wall? Usually, it is not a dramatic event. Usually, it is something very small. Sometimes it is simply your absence, but not the fresh absence of the first few weeks. The permanent kind. The silence of a man who has actually moved forward. No more "I still miss you" messages. No more liking her pictures at midnight. No more half-open door. And one day she realizes that the door she quietly assumed would always remain open has closed. No dramatic slam. No announcement. It is simply gone. Sometimes it is much more personal. She happens to see you. In a photograph, through a story from someone you both know, or face-to-face in real life. And she recognizes something immediately. You are no longer the man she left behind. You stand differently. You speak differently. There is a calmness in the way you carry yourself that was not there before. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer scanning her for signals. You have taken back all the energy you once poured into trying to make her stay and invested it in yourself. And in that moment, something strange can happen inside her. The filter that turned down your value for years, no longer works as effectively. The evidence has become too clear to mute, and emotional information that had been blocked can begin arriving all at once. She sees you, the actual man, perhaps for the first time without the same defensive lens. The emotional depth she once called too sensitive, the patience she mistook for weakness. The fact that you saw the ugliest parts of her and still chose to stay, not because you changed so she would regret losing you, but because your growth finally exposed a value she did not have the capacity to fully see while she still had access to it. I need to clarify something, because the phrase, "her life falls apart," can easily be misunderstood. I am not saying she will lose her job. I am not saying she will become poor, alone, or rejected by the world. Many avoidant people live highly successful lives. They have strong careers, friends, beautiful pictures, and lives that look completely stable from the outside. The fracture happens somewhere else, and it is much more private. When she was with you, another version of her may have existed. A softer version, a more open version, a more emotionally alive version. That version did not appear from nowhere. It was able to exist because of the safety your love created. And through every withdrawal, every avoidance, every choice of distance over truth, she damaged the very environment that allowed that version of herself to exist. What remains afterward is not simply the life she had before meeting you. In one important sense, it can feel smaller, because before you, she did not know what she was missing. After you, she does. The independence that once made her proud can begin to taste like limitation. The emotional distance she once called maturity can begin to reveal itself as loneliness. The identity built around "I do not need anyone" can start losing its certainty, because now she knows what it feels like to be truly seen by someone. And there is another finding that helps explain this. In 2013, a study published in PLOS ONE by Marshall, Bejanyan, and Ferenczi measured personal growth after breakups. The result was striking. People higher in attachment anxiety, the people who hurt the most, also reported more growth because the pain forced them to reflect, process, and rewrite their story. And avoidant individuals? Suppression could help them appear to recover faster on the surface, but that same strategy could interfere with growth. No processed pain means fewer lessons. Fewer lessons mean the next relationship can follow the same path. That is the real fracture. Not an explosion, a quiet narrowing. Now I have to tell you something. Most videos on this subject will never tell you, because it is not comfortable. But if you genuinely want to get out of this pattern, you need to hear it. In 2011, researcher Marco Del Giudice published a meta-analysis in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, combining 113 research samples involving more than 66,000 people. The question was simple. Between men and women, who scores higher in attachment avoidance? The result: men scored higher in attachment avoidance than women, and the difference increased with age. I know that is probably not what you want to hear while you are hurting, but it matters for two reasons. First, it shows you that avoidance is not a female problem. It is an emotional survival strategy human beings use when reaching for someone once resulted in pain. That woman is not a monster. She is a person who learned, often very early, that needing someone could be dangerous. Second, and this is what I am much more concerned about for you, the greatest risk after being hurt by an avoidant person is not that you will never forget her. The greatest risk is that you will become like her. You loved fully once and were punished for it. Your brain recorded the lesson. Opening up equals pain. And if you do not process that lesson consciously, you may automatically start building walls. You will call it maturity. You will call it not being naive anymore. But that is not necessarily maturity. It may be the same mechanism that damaged her beginning to grow inside you. And here is the final piece of data I want to give you. In 2015, a study by Morris, Reiber, and Roman surveyed 5,705 people across 96 countries about breakup pain. Women reported greater pain, emotionally and physically, but they also recovered more completely. Men? Men often reported less initial pain, But the researchers concluded that men frequently did not recover completely. They simply moved on, carrying unresolved emotion into the next relationship. You are standing in front of two paths, and you need to choose consciously, because if you do not choose, your nervous system will choose for you, and it will usually choose defense. So what do? Here are 4 concrete steps based on what this research points toward. 1. Name the pain instead of suppressing it. This is not soft advice. Research by Sbarra and colleagues suggests that people who are able to rebuild the story of their breakup into a coherent narrative, with a beginning, a cause, and a meaning, tend to recover better. Write it down. Not for her to read. For your brain to close the file. Every evening, for 15 minutes, write exactly what happened and exactly what you felt. No justification. No blame. Just record it honestly. 2. Stop measuring your recovery against her surface. Every time you visit her profile, you are comparing your chaotic inner world with the most edited version of hers. That is not information. That is poison. Block, mute, hide, delete. Not because you hate her, but because you need a clean environment in which to heal. 3. Separate "she did not have the capacity to love me well" from "I am not worthy of love." This is the decisive breakpoint. Thousands of men go through this and draw the wrong conclusion. The truth is that your love was not too much. It may simply have been given to someone who did not have the tools to receive it. A colorblind person does not prove that red does not exist. 4. Keep your capacity to love, but raise your standard for reciprocity. This is what separates maturity from emotional hardening. The hardened man says, "I will never love like that again." The mature man says, "I will still love like that, but I will leave much earlier when that love is not returned in a meaningful way." Your patience was not the flaw. Failing to place limits around it was the flaw. And boundaries are a skill, not a personality trait. Skills can be learned. I know why you came to this video. Part of you wants to hear that she will regret it, that she will lie awake at night, that she will understand what she lost. And you know what? The research suggests that delayed psychological costs can be real. But I want to leave you with something more valuable than revenge. Because as long as your healing depends on how much she hurts, your story is still her story. You are still waiting for a verdict in a courtroom you do not control. The truth is that the most important transformation does not happen inside her. It happens inside you. While she may have used distance to avoid feeling, you faced the pain directly. You did not run. You carried it, processed it, and little by little turned it into part of your growth instead of part of your identity. That requires a kind of courage very few people talk about. Look back. The self-respect you rebuilt from the ground up. The calmness you did not have 3 years ago. The fact that you learned your worth does not require someone else's confirmation. That is not an appendix to the pain. That is the story. Yes, she lost you. And with your absence, she may also have lost the opportunity to become the version of herself that your love was quietly inviting forward. But you did not lose yourself. You survived the silence. You survived the unanswered questions. You survived the long, invisible work of putting yourself back together. And somewhere along that road, you became more whole than you were before she appeared. She may live with questions about what she failed to keep. You get to live with answers about who you are. And once you truly know your own value, another person's inability to recognize it no longer has the power to define your future.